Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on May the 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout, and joining my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Good, Robert. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
We're in the thick of May. It's getting nice out. It's feeling like spring here in Atlanta.
Yes, and we've had weeks. I think the last 3 times we recorded, it was every 2 weeks. And then this last week has been a lot of news.
There has. Yeah,
it's been kind of crazy to see the pace of the pickup, but we'll just kind of jump in here. The first one is the acquisition streak in crypto continues, and the deal sizes keep getting bigger. So Coinbase is buying Deribit. Most, probably 99% of people have probably never heard of Deribit, but Deribit is a crypto options platform, and it ended up being a $2.9 billion deal for Coinbase to acquire them. $700 million in cash and 11 million shares of Coinbase stock. So, this is just, I guess, allowing Coinbase to offer more products effectively, or more types of products. So it's, this one caught me off guard. I wouldn't necessarily say I was watching for this one, but it makes total sense at the same time. So.
Well, Coinbase is in the news a lot right now.
Yes, they've had a rough last few days. Yeah.
Well, it's not just it's not just this acquisition, which which is obviously news to follow as they bolt on additional capabilities to the platform, but they're set to join the S&P 500, which is a major milestone for them as a company, but also for crypto.
Yes.
Ironically, they're replacing Discover, which was acquired by Capital One.
Yeah.
So the expected date for them to join the index is May 19th. And obviously with the number of institutional investors and mutual funds and other index funds that have become, just quite common for most investors in 401ks indirectly, all these investors are now going to have exposure, like I said, indirectly to crypto, or at least the industry.
Right.
So just another big milestone, I think. And then obviously on a bit of a downer, there was a cyber attack. With Coinbase, and there was a group of cyber criminals who, it sounds like, baited some offshore customer service folks to share customer info, social security numbers. There's expectations, or I guess analyst reports, that this could cost the company $400 million. There was a $20 million ransom demanded. They did not pay it.
Right.
They are offering instead a $20 million reward for the person's head.
Yeah.
So it's overall it's not the first company that's had a cyber attack, right? Lots of financial companies have been attacked like this. It's just it's a news-making one because it's in crypto.
Yeah, and I think we should be very clear here. No customer funds were accessed. It was purely just data. And on the topic of social security numbers, I believe it was just the last 4 digits of somebody's social security number. It wasn't the full one. So, not great, but could have been worse, I suppose. And so the same day that was that Coinbase announced that hack, the SEC also said they might be suing Coinbase. It was a rough day, I'm sure, at headquarters. And they were happy to kind of see that move on. And it sounds like that lawsuit may not even happen, or may not go anywhere, because it's over a metric that Coinbase used to report on in their quarterly financials about user activity. They've stopped doing that 2.5 years ago. So if anything, it will be maybe a small fine or something if anything comes of it. So anyways, but that's that's a lot of news in just the first bullet point there for Coinbase.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of it was hidden, but so our next topic is, I shortened it a little bit, but it's Missouri to exempt capital gains on crypto, stock, and real estate. But obviously, we probably care a little bit more about the crypto in this show. Obviously, this is just state taxes. Some states don't even have this tax at all, so it's not like it's truly like an anomaly. But most states will have a tax on crypto, much like it's a normal capital gains treatment. And starting to see some states go the opposite direction. So it'd be interesting to see how much of this happens across multiple states, or is this just kind of like a one and done for a while type situation?
Yeah, I keep wondering with these states that are passing these crypto bills and trying to sort of show their friendliness or acceptance of the crypto industry, what's the bigger play? When you think about states that have gotten, I guess, some notoriety, Connecticut was and is, still has the lion's share of like incorporations, right?
Delaware.
And certain states are well known for places where you would open up a certain type of trust, and there's a lot of companies located there. I always wonder when these states are, passing these bills and thinking about reserves, like, is there a bigger strategic objective at the state level? I don't know. I guess this is good for people that live in Missouri or
Right.
retire in Missouri, as far as, the capital gains exemptions.
Yeah, to your point of trying to attract maybe other things within crypto,
Yeah.
I think Missouri would have a long road there.
Yeah.
It's not a Miami. It doesn't have the amazing weather that some of these other places that have become crypto friendly have.
But it's got the Chiefs, and we're going to Kansas City. You know what I mean? As a person who spent a lot of time there, because I grew up, in central Kansas, it's an underrated mid-size U.S. city. It's a great quality of life, and but yeah, you're right. Like the industry there is it's much more diversified. It's not concentrated in financial services or crypto.
Right.
So I agree. It'd be a harder sell to compete against places even in the Midwest like Chicago. So much less a Florida or New York. But yeah, they're trying to make a play.
Yep. Well, moving on here. So this is a very general topic, but the SEC changing priorities. This is more so speaking to the you have Hester Peirce, which is a commissioner. She's been very crypto forward thinking, certainly the last 4 years, but she's, I would imagine, leading the charge right now internally with the commissioners around crypto and just kind of righting some wrongs, but also trying to put some guidance in place.
Yeah.
And it was cool to see that she, her idea that she's long had about like having a safe harbor so you can issue a token that is intended to be decentralized and therefore not a security, have a period of time for like a sandbox to be able to like have a finish line that you need to get past, whether it's 2 or 3 years later, to prove decentralization and kind of effectively morph from being a security into a commodity or whatever they want to call that second stage. Then you even have, and we'll get to it later, but Paul Atkins was talking kind of like at a higher level. And it's cool to see, like, this feels constructive, right? This, obviously they can say something and they got to follow through on it. But we actually have seen some action in the last 3 months. And I think we will continue to kind of see some more refinement around this. And it's cool to see the SEC basically saying, you know what, some of this is not under our jurisdiction, because the last 4 years, even a bottle of ketchup was a security and it was underneath their jurisdiction. So,
yeah, it's funny how, I'll give you one anecdote. I was at a major private credit conference this week with close to 1,700 folks from all over the country. A lot of folks from, the sort of financial capital, like, you'd imagine New York, but people from all over, and the largest asset managers in the world were there. And I was speaking to one of the folks from one of the largest firms that we speak about and talk about on this show on a regular basis, and he leads their institutional fundraising business, right? So endowments, pensions, etc. And I talked to him for like 10 minutes about crypto, and he had no clue that the company was doing any of it. No clue. And so and this is at one of the largest, most prolific, asset managers. And so I always wonder, are we like in an echo chamber or are these things actually making, their way down to retail and into the mainstream? And I think, if one thing the SEC can do is it's got a pretty big megaphone. So when it decides to make change or announce, that we're open for business or crypto is going to be more, I want to say less regulated in a sense, but there's going to be more structure. Defined. I think that they haven't, more defined. Like, they think they have an opportunity to really get people's attention. Because even folks inside of some of these firms are not aware of all this stuff happening day to day.
Yeah, and not I have no idea what this gentleman's opinion is, but like it could be personal bias too, right? Like I don't like crypto, so I'm not going to pay attention to it,
Yeah.
or purely not paying attention, and it's happening, obviously, no fault of
Yeah.
their own. So
Yeah.
who knows? But the yeah, it's a I think what's happening is like it's happening so quickly that it's all of a sudden, if they have a yearly training on new products, we're going to get that wave in a year or so once some of these other firms catch up. So we will see. Our next topic was a bit of a downer and a bit unexpected. So this was it last Friday, a week ago, or maybe a week ago Thursday? The Senate did do a vote on the Genius Act. It's the stablecoin bill. It had gone through the House, had gone through the Senate. They had done reconciliation between the two bills. They were back voting on it in the Senate, and it did not get the votes it needed. So it's kind of in a precarious spot because it has one more chance if it's brought back for a floor vote in its current form without having to be restructured and brought back through as a different bill. Obviously, that takes more time. There's more risk. This was a political move, it seemed. There were some Senate Democrats that were in support of it. Two of the sponsors of the bill voted against it, which was kind of surprising to think that you would sponsor something and vote against it. It sounds like maybe this coming Monday, so I guess that would be the 19th. There may be another vote, but boy, man, it's a little bit too much.
Last time we talked about this update, there was a couple of, like, Sherrod Brown was one of the I guess was more vocal about some opposition, and it some fairly sort of technical but important aspects of the bill that they were getting caught up on. One of them had to do with defining certain financial institutions and how they would be regulated. Do you have any insight or perspective from the news headlines as to like what's holding up?
No, I actually looked a little bit for that, and it just did seem like there was just a bunch of no votes, and there wasn't tons of discussion at that point. And obviously, at that moment, there's not a floor discussion; it's purely just submitting your votes. But it's gosh, it just reeks of politics. To be for something to be a sponsor and then vote against it, and it was a close vote. I don't know. We'll see. I guess there's always drama in crypto in some form or fashion, and here we are with it. With what seemingly was a bipartisan thing leading up to this. So,
well, there's going to be some jockeying happening over the weekend.
Yeah. So transitioning to our next topic, which these do tie together, on the same day that Democrats voted down the Genius Act in the Senate, Meta, so Facebook, announced that they are doing a stablecoin integration doing something called MetaPay, so you'll be able to pay within a wallet that they'll put in your Facebook and Instagram accounts. I don't know if these are timed together, but they were within hours of each other. And for those that have been in crypto for a while, I guess scrolling back all the way to 2019, 2020, Facebook had announced Diem, which was going to be the stable coin that was a basket of a euro, a dollar, and I want to say the Japanese yen. And man, that was the wrong time to announce that. At the time, they were still coming out of their whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, where they were manipulating or appeared to manipulate an election. So it was just obviously a bad time. They've gone through that. That team is no longer at Facebook, but it's they plan to use USDC and USDT. So they're using someone else's products. They're kind of integrating, and I think this is certainly the more safe route for them to go. And certainly a lot less political. So
I did notice that in the news that they were coming back with this stable coin for payments through their different applications, WhatsApp and Instagram, Facebook. So for creators, in one use case, right, this gives them and will give them, if all proceeds, like an opportunity to use, like you said, one of the two major stable coins for transactions. So again, we're seeing this move into sort of e-commerce and the utilization of crypto, and the blockchain technology behind it in the real world. And so obviously this is one of the largest platforms, not the largest social media platform in the world, right? Got to be over 1.5 billion users or something.
3 or 4 billion. And it's to think that they could just turn it on and your wallet's there. That's a huge introduction to crypto, to established countries and third world countries too, depending if they're using Facebook. So,
well, if you think about how quickly folks have adopted different forms of payments in the last decade, right? Like, so I don't even know if 10 years ago you could pay with your phone, right? Now you can tap, and I mean, you don't literally, I mean, many people don't use credit cards anymore, don't use a debit card, right? I mean, they still pay with them, but it's digital.
Correct.
So just to think about how quickly the advancements have taken place, and I would think that the adoption, and just look at how quickly AI is being adopted and utilized. Like, I just think that we might be underappreciating how quickly crypto and some of these payment methods might be mainstream within a matter of years.
Yeah, the thing about this Meta wallet integration that I first thought about, and this is more putting my Teton Crypto Capital hat on here, is there's going to be people that try to use this for cross-border remittance to send money to family in other countries. Like, does Facebook have a tax reporting liability here? Like, how does that work? Like, there's more to this than just integrating a wallet. I'd imagine the teams are spending more time on all the other things than they are actually the wallet piece. Because again, the rails, the technology are already there. What they haven't announced, as far as I'm aware of, is which crypto networks they're integrating those stablecoins on, because that will also be a boon for those networks. So anyways, I'm sure there's more details to come. This was a very, very general announcement that they did back on the 12th. So moving on here, man, we've talked on the show and offline about this Arizona thing. Quite the drama scene down there, out west. So they've had two competing bills. One, the governor vetoed; the other, the one, it sounded like she also vetoed in the news, but I have since gone and looked. She did sign it into law. They're the second state with a Bitcoin reserve. They potentially could use rainy day funds, is kind of how they would source the capital to buy Bitcoin in this case. But man, it's a bit of flip-flopping out there. So.
Well, yeah, I was getting ready to say the punchline is it makes the Waste Management Open look like a like a joke, right? I mean, this was whipsaw, because I thought the last time we talked about it, we had said on the headline in our check-in that they had the legislature had passed it.
Passed it, yes.
And then the governor got to the governor's desk and she vetoed it, which was a surprise. And then, like, literally that afternoon after our update, or maybe the next day, we see that there was a signature and a law. So simultaneous bills maybe were snaking their way to her desk.
Right. Yeah. So I believe the first state that got a bill across the finish line was New Hampshire, and now Arizona's the second. That's the only two at this point. There's a lot that are in different states. Even our home state of Georgia has one early stages. I don't know if it'll get brought to the floor for a vote, but it is slowly moving along. And whether these are meaningful purchases or this is more of a
symbolic,
some sense marketing, we will see. And it could be trying to make their citizens happy too. So who knows? On the topic of stable coins, so the Genius Act that got got voted down in the Senate was going to set obviously rules and regulations around like how a stablecoin can be constructed and what it has to have, what it can't have as collateral underneath it, and I guess reporting requirements. USDT is, for as long as it's functionally been around, it's had this cloud around it. Some people view it as a black cloud, some people view it as a white cloud, but a lot of suspicion sometimes around, like, do they have the collateral? What kind of collateral they have? That whole story is morphed over time. There used to be like rumors that there was Chinese company bonds as part of their collateral. I haven't heard that in forever. If that was the case, I don't think that's the case anymore. But they do hold Bitcoin, so you have a volatile asset as part of the collateral. They've never done a public audit through a third party. I'll say that up front, at least that I'm aware of. It's always the accounting department at Tether doing an audit, which by definition is not an audit. So anyways, there's news swirling around, like, if we were to get the Genius Act passed as part of law in the U.S., that somehow it would sweep USDT under U.S. jurisdiction if it's going to touch U.S. I guess consumers. What's interesting about this is when MiCA passed in the EU, basically it wasn't compliant, and people just don't touch USDT out there anymore. The same could happen here, which would be a boon for USDC and other US based. But I don't know. It's splitting liquidity. And admittedly, I think as an American, these stable coins are generally good because it's providing a market for treasuries and other things to, I guess try to support the dollar. I understand that's a political statement, but it is a big driver. I mean, these are billions and billions, almost $100 billion in USDT. So,
yeah, when you step back and try to, I guess, make it a headline that the sort of non-crypto average person would understand, it's interesting that you have USDC, USDT, other stable coins, and they're all sort of arguing, and we're all debating, and the industry's trying to figure out like what is a stable coin and like what qualifies to go inside of a stable coin. And because this is like an industry where you have you have a location like Hong Kong, which is very, very progressive, very forward thinking, wants to be the crypto capital of Asia, that they may look at an entire issue, or Europe, you talked about Mika, like differently than say the US. And it just, when you put that next to say like what's a US Treasury bond, like what's in a US Treasury bond, like everybody sort of understands and agrees, and there's a process and an auction. That in this world it's just different. So we're just sorting it out. I think it'll get sorted out over the next year or two, but so much of our industry, as you and I have talked about on these updates and these check-ins, like there's so much regulation and still politics and just a sorting, right, that's got to take place. And then once all that's done and in place, you just wonder like, will there be this era of like mass innovation, or will there or will we see several more years of trying to put definition, right, and parameters around this?
I guess time will tell, but my sense is if we can get clear regulation that's not overly burdensome,
sure,
it will be nice defining guardrails that the industry can kind of run with. But time will tell what Congress comes up with, because
this next update in our check-in will this individual will probably have a say in where things go over the years, for sure.
So Paul Ekins recently I guess confirmed in the SEC. We talked about that 1 or 2 episodes ago. He was giving his first public speech, and this one was at the roundtable that happened for crypto. I think they're on their 4th, maybe 5th roundtable. They're done with different topics. This one was, I believe, tokenization. But he said the SEC needed to create clear guidelines for crypto issuance and explore new registration exemptions for safe harbors. Back to the thing we were talking about was Hester Peirce idea there. Provide consumers with expanding custody options, including self-custody, potential updates to the qualified custodian definition. That's a big one. And I think that one will fly underneath the radar, but self-custody is important to the crypto industry, period. And also the whole qualified custodian thing, that can be a bit of a nightmare because that becomes expensive to be part of. So giving people a, right, at the end of the day, the self-custody is no different than if you hold some gold bars and you keep them in your safe at home. I mean, that's self-custody for crypto effectively. So, and the third thing I guess I'll point out about the speech was explore integrated trading platforms and modernization of ATS regulations to better accommodate crypto assets. I think if you reword that it says basically make it easier for crypto to be traded on traditional platforms, maybe like a NASDAQ or those kind of digital platforms that would show in a brokerage account. So all positive news, which is great. And I didn't hold my breath when I heard he was going to talk. We are very different than we were 6 months ago. So
yeah, I think people are eager to hear.
Yes.
Atkins speak, and I don't think it's just in the crypto space. I think there's a lot of hope. I mean, like I said, that or maybe even more than hope. There's a lot of excitement, even from folks outside of just crypto, but other alternative investment spaces and asset classes where I'm active. That there's going to be this is going to be a much more progressive SEC sort of regime, and there's going to be perhaps a broadening of the accredited investor definition. And right. We're starting to see alternatives now moving to 401k accounts. That was never talked about. And you'd have a hard time thinking that, inside of a 401k that you could buy or have access to alternative investments, right? Which pension funds and endowments and big institutions have had for decades. And so, there's just this overall, I think, movement underway at the SEC, and I think crypto's, potentially the industry really stands to benefit. So these speeches will be, hotly anticipated, over the next, year or two as he gets established, and they look for more, ways to provide this clarity that they've all claimed to want to do.
Yeah, and there's certainly been some people that are frustrated that more hasn't happened yet. Like there
Sure.
isn't regulation ready. But all these roundtables normally would not be compressed into a time period of 2 months. They would have happened over the last 4 years. So I guess kudos to the SEC staff that are trying to accelerate this and play a bit of catch up.
I was going to use the same word. Like they're probably feeling a little bit behind where maybe even other jurisdictions are, or other countries
100%.
are, in terms of, being able to keep jobs and development and innovation here in the US.
Yeah, because I think a bit of the risk is the SEC continues to be slow or do nothing. And then you also start having states try to come up with their own rules. And then we have 50 different sets of rules. We need one set of rules. So we will hopefully get that sometime in the next year or so. So moving on to our last topic, and there's not tons to talk about here. This just caught me kind of off guard. Thailand is set to sell $150 million worth of crypto to their public. This first, when I read it, I was like, oh, are they launching a meme coin or what's going on here? I could find very little details about it, but it's interesting to see a country do something. I mean, you've seen countries buy other things. You haven't seen countries sell. This is the first country I think I've seen ever sell something.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a headline like this before.
Yeah. So again, hopefully this is not some kind of pump and dump of any sort that would hurt their citizens, but kind of interesting nonetheless. So,
well, yeah, you look at what's going on with we talked about this one a month or two ago, like with Argentina and their the disaster there with their prime minister or president with meme coins. So, well, I'd love to get your take. There's this I guess the sentiment, it seems like, with crypto right now, like if you look at prices over the last week, and certainly the month of April, we saw prices kind of for sure for Bitcoin. I mean, it's up over 104,000. It was at 85, 86, not long ago. Some of the other altcoins, have also, including Ethereum, have had, nice little runs here. What's your overall sense? Is this a reaction to, the broader economic news around trade and some of these trade deals that are kind of being announced, or pausing these trade wars, if you will? Or is there something else going on, like more in the crypto cycle?
I think generally we're still in the crypto bull market cycle, maybe taking a bit of a breather of sorts. Yes, the prices were up over the last, call it 6 weeks at this point. I think it's largely just been driven by, we were so beat down in Q1. So crypto was up in April when most of the market wasn't.
Right.
Or most of the, I guess, equities market wasn't. But I think it's just purely like a bit of like a little less of the boot on the neck the last couple of weeks. Just generally economically with all the tariff stuff.
Okay. So you feel like it's maybe just a little bit of a breather.
I mean, people are not going to invest in the riskiest asset class they can find if they feel like they're getting pinched other places, right? Like, So, I guess more broadly, there's never been a bull market where there was a down market in equities. So while that, that recession of April of 2025 that everyone was talking about, obviously it wasn't a recession per se, but it definitely gave a moment of pause in crypto. So I think that crypto, this is certainly not a price prediction, but I think that we continue our bull market cycle, and we're very happy towards the end of 2025. So
fascinating.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.